All right, let's move on. We've got another review that I want to dive into, and that is for Triangle Strategy. This is the brand new title from Square Enix, and I believe it's being published by Nintendo, because Nintendo sent me out the review code for this. It's out for the Nintendo Switch, and I'm using a little bit of trailer footage here to kind of show off the encapsulation of the adventure that you're going to go on, but it doesn't quite play out like this. This is a game that definitely requires a little bit of patience. I streamed some of this on Friday and on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/EPN, and it was fun to play for sure, but there is a tremendous amount of story that is thrust upon you at the beginning, so there's a lot of narrative to kind of weave through and pay attention to. There's lots of different characters that you are introduced to, and there's a lot of minutia within the sort of story construct that comes into play with the decisions that you make with regards to your team members and the direction that your group takes progressing in this very well-crafted story that has the perfect title for it, because you really are caught in this triangle. You're part of a kingdom that has to contend with a couple of other kingdoms in this land called Norzelia, and so you're caught in this power struggle between these three disparate factions, and there's a lot of subterfuge and there's a lot of backstabbing, and also part of the storytelling as you sort of traverse through the map of Norzelia is you pop onto side story elements, and they also help to flesh out and define everything. And so this is a game that definitely asks you to, follow along with all of these story threads and get to know these different characters and their motivations and what they're up to and what they want out of the world. And then you contend with this epic battle that erupts, and you have to kind of create alliances, and you're constantly engaging your party and trying to rally them, but also go to them to get some advice about what to do next. And you actually have this really cool element within the game where you're voting on things, and you have this scale, and everybody puts a token on the scale to decide, whether you're going to go to battle, or whether you're going to protect somebody, or whether you're going to give somebody up. And, a lot of that was a kind of an expectation on you as a player to kind of just chill and get lost in the story and watch all of that. And it's really like putting the controller down and just sort of soaking up all of that information. And it was a bit like watching Game of Thrones as if it were crafted on the Super Nintendo, because this uses the 2D HD kind of quality that Octopath Traveler used, and Square Enix is doubling down on. So there's going to be a lot more titles that use this beautiful art style that definitely pulls from classic Square RPGs, which is really cool. But you're using pixelated characters on 3D environments, and there's some really fantastic details in the background and some focus pulling and stuff that happens. But I have to say that one of the problems I had with the storytelling in the game is that we are stuck in these isometric viewpoints. Now, you can swivel the camera around a little bit, especially when you're playing the game, but for the most part, you're stuck on these static camera angles, and you can press the X button and you can pop up a little bit of information between the characters that you're talking to, and you do start to care about all of them. But I felt presentation-wise and production-wise, it would have been much better for there to have been some, some zoom-ins, even if we got pixelated faces or whatever, or some camera pans, just to help animate the story a little bit more, because there's some great voice acting in here. There's some slightly cheesy voice acting in here as well. And there's some beautiful music, and all of the elements are in place to deliver a very mature, very thoughtful, wonderful story experience. But you are sitting and watching these pieces for long periods of time, and I haven't even really gotten into the meat of what the gameplay is, and that's kind of what it's like playing this game. Is like the gameplay is a turn-based tactical strategy experience, not unlike Advance Wars or Final Fantasy Tactics, which I think it most closely resembles. But you spend so much time in the narrative and in the world building and the relationships between these characters that you almost forget that you're playing a tactical turn-based experience. And when you finally do get into these battles, it's absolutely incredible. And so I love this game. So, flat out, I had an incredible weekend playing this game. I could not stop playing it. I also feel like it's not going to be the game that converts you if you've never played a turn-based, grid-styled strategy tactics game like this before. This won't be the one. There are other games that I would recommend, even going to Fire Emblem or Advance Wars or something like that. There's other titles that are coming out this year. This is a big year for strategy experiences. But if you like that style of gameplay and you also love classic role-playing adventures from Square Enix, you're going to be in heaven, because there is just this beautiful level of detail and lots of great visual stimulation, and no expense was spared with the soundtrack and the voice acting and these visual flourishes and effects and things like that. And it's really fun. I mean, it's like all the best tactical strategy experiences out there. It really tests your mettle and gives you this kind of chess game that comes alive. And so you have to be very smart and strategic with the place on the board that you're moving your characters to. You want to protect your healers. You want to create symbiotic relationships between a couple of different characters and keep them together. If there's characters that you have to protect, you have to constantly throw shield magic around them, maybe a fire shield or some kind of buff that gives them a little bit of extra protection, because everybody's going to be chasing after them on the board. There are traps and things that you can set off. There's all of these wonderful little elements within each map that gives you a strategy. Sometimes you have to open a locked door. Sometimes you have to get to the end of a space, and there might still be other enemies on the board, but you just are racing from one end of the board to the other. It is just a joy to play that. I really, really love that. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed soaking up the story bits for sure, but it is overwhelming. And I found that even on the stream. Like, we spent, I think, 3 hours or so playing the video game, and most of that I had my controller on the desk, and I was just watching the screen. And if that doesn't sound fun to you, I think be aware that that's part of the experience here. Now, once you do kind of lean into it and give yourself over to the experience like I did over the weekend, you can't put it down. I mean, it's just so tuned and so well crafted, and it's so addictive. I really loved getting to know these characters, and you can have I think up to 20 different characters in your party, and all of them have different abilities. There's characters that have range weapons and lots of melee type weapons, and there's magic attacks, and you're able to level them up and kind of manage each character independently. You can go into encampments and a big chunk of the game, not only are you in these sort of story-driven narrative things where you kind of sit back and watch all of that, but you also have to go and explore and chat with everybody that you might meet in a town or in your encampment or whatever. You're constantly talking to the characters. There's no filler characters in there. Even when we're on these side story pieces where you're not really playing anything, you're just watching stuff, the characters are really well thought out, and the intrigue is real. Like, you really are caught up in the maturity of it and the level of detail that the developers went to make this thing rise above its kind of antiquated visuals. It's like the best of the Square Enix role-playing experiences as well, right? Like, they were so broad and filled with ambition and thoughtfulness that when you would play them, even if the characters are a little itty-bitty, you would be lost in your imagination. And that happens with this game as well. And then, I mean, the core play style, the sort of chessboard, on the grid-based tactical strategy play style, is just so much fun. You don't have the same effects with enemies dying on the board like you would in something like Fire Emblem, where they're gone forever. The story defines when characters leave the rest of the missions, and there are some deaths and there are some crazy backstabs and some shocks in the game. But I just freaking love it, and I cannot believe the quality of releases over this last month Dying Light 2 and Sifu and Elden Ring and Horizon Forbidden West and Gran Turismo. And there's some huge, massive 3D beautiful experiences out there, and I had no problem getting lost in this 2D HD wonderful creation from Square Enix. I was completely hooked by it. And I think if you dig this kind of stuff, if you love classic JRPGs from Square Enix, if you are also a fan of strategy games, you've got a Nintendo Switch because it's exclusive to the Switch, at least right now, I think it's definitely worth checking out. I don't think it's for everybody, and I do think that the presentation around the story could have been beefed up. That's my only complaint with it. Everything else could have been the same, but if they had just done a little bit more to bring us into these characters and animate them a little bit, even if they were all blocky and pixelated, I think that would have been a great improvement for the experience. But if you can look past that, and I know many of you can, you're going to love this game. It's really, really wonderful. The story, the title is so generic, but it fits so well, I've never been a fan of this being the game's title. I think that this is kind of a forgettable title, but the game is anything but. It's really, really great. I'm going to give Triangle Strategy for Nintendo Switch a 9 out of 10.